Hi, I'm Melissa Nadworny, and this is Book of the Day. Today we have two books about running, even though one of them is called This Is Not a Book About Running. We'll get to that. First, the book The Long Run by marathoner Martin Dugard. Perhaps you see people running a marathon and think, why would anyone subject themselves to those 26.2 miles of pain? Or maybe you're like me, training for your fourth. Whoops. Dugard believes the marathon is a reason to rise to the occasion. And he spoke with Morning Edition host A. Martínez about that poll.
This message comes from Mint Mobile. If you're tired of spending hundreds on big wireless bills, bogus fees, and free perks, Mint Mobile might be right for you with plans starting from $15 a month. Shop plans today at mintmobile.com/switch. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5 GB plan required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
This message comes from Grainger. This is the story of the one. As a procurement manager for a hospital system, she keeps every facility in her network stocked and ready. That's why she counts on Grainger to be her single source for thousands of products, from disinfectants to lighting, air filters, and more. And with fast, dependable delivery, Grainger helps her keep every facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This message comes from BetterHelp. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, a reminder that you don't have to do this life alone. From loneliness to anxiety to financial stress, right now people everywhere are struggling. But having a licensed therapist with you by video, phone, or chat can make a difference. And BetterHelp makes it easy. Sign up now and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/NPR. That's betterhelp.com/NPR.
I am a runner. I started running back in the late part of the 20th century, also known as the 1990s. And these days, because of my ever-shifting work schedule, I either run at 11 p.m. or 3 a.m., but one way or another, I gots to get my miles in. Martin Dugard is an author and running coach. His new book is The Long Run. And I started by asking him why people would voluntarily subject themselves to the pain of running 26.2 miles.
I think we're wired to do hard things. That's kind of, seriously, it's kind of perverse, but, the marathon has become one of the great bucket list items. I think people get something real out of pushing limits they didn't know that they had. Most of modern life is kind of mediocre, kind of average, and I think we like to rise above that mediocrity.
Tell us about the origins of the marathon, the long-term mythological history of it.
The common story that we're told is that there was the Battle of Marathon between the Persians and the Greeks, and that a warrior messenger, a guy who actually fought in the battle, was dispatched afterwards to tell the people of Athens that they had won. And the legend is that he ran 40 kilometers, about 25 miles up the hill to Athens. And as he gets to the Acropolis, he shouts, "Nike, Nike," which is victory, victory. And then he drops dead. His name was Phidippides. The truth is there was a guy named Phidippides, but the legend shows that he actually did run all the way to Sparta to try to enlist help, and he came all the way back. But historians, from Herodotus all the way up until almost the 3rd century, nobody mentions this guy by name. Nobody mentioned that he ran all the way to Athens. Nobody mentioned that he dropped dead. The British poet Robert Browning kind of introduced that myth in the late 19th century, and that's the one we cling to today. But it's such a lively take on, that it inspired the first modern Olympics in 1896. It inspired the organizers to hold the first ever marathon. And, they named it after the battle, and they followed the same course that Phidippides would have followed. And it ignited a running boom. It was just one of the first booms in running back in the late 19th century.
Yeah. So, okay, you mentioned how the distance from Athens to Marathon is around 25 miles. How is the marathon length, though, 26.2 miles? That's the contemporary distance.
That's another one of these myths, too, because if you go on AI and you say, why is the marathon 26.2 miles, it'll say that the British family wanted the marathon in the 1908 London Olympics to end right before the Royal Box.
Yeah.
And in fact, the marathon always ends before the Royal Box, or used to at least. It's not the end that's the reason, it's the start. They moved the start back 1.2 miles, hoping that King Edward would come and be the official starter for the marathon.
Now, The marathon was part of the Olympics for a few Olympics in the early part of the 20th century. But when exactly did the marathon become less of just an Olympic sport and a sport that everyone could take part of?
If I had to put a number on it, I would say late 1950s, early 1960s. That's when the Roadrunners Club of America was found, and you really had people going out there to contest races. But when you look at the modern runner, where it's kind of cool and hip to be a runner, back then they were just a bunch of nerds. And so, the Boston Marathon was founded in 1897, and there were a few others that came along, but things really exploded in the 1970s. And I think with the New York City Marathon being founded in 1970, 55 people finished out of 127 starters. You had people running in actual running shoes. So a lot of things began happening to make running just explode.
Yeah, and then you add to that the 1972 Olympics in Munich when Frank Shorter wins the Olympic marathon, what first gold in that event for a U.S. runner since 1908. So you're right. All of these things came together at the perfect time, it sounds like, to kind of make running into something that a lot of people could take part of. Tell us about that Olympics and Frank Shorter's victory that was also part of that linchpin to get things going.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that victory, look, I was, in 1972, I was 11 years old. I literally was so inspired by Frank Shorter winning that Munich marathon that I stepped out the door in my jeans and my pro Keds and spontaneously ran 4 miles. And I used to think that was just me, but now from talking to people, it was a big deal. A lot of people kind of got that same motivation. But it was the first time the marathon was ever broadcast live in its entirety. And Shorter doesn't just win, he wins in amazing fashion. It's just this big, dramatic moment. What Shorter did that day didn't just change the fact that people became runners, it changed how we ate, the clothes we wear. Even to this day, when developers build a subdivision, they used to build like clubhouses so you could go play pool or watch TV. Now they put trails in so people can hike and run. So just that one marathon changed, like I said, a revolution that changed how we live our lives.
What was it about the marathon in the Olympics or just in general that didn't include women, at least at first?
There was a woman who tried to run that first marathon in 1896, and she even showed up at the starting line, and they wouldn't let her do it. So she ended up running it on her own the next day because, the female sex is clearly weaker than the men, so they were afraid she was going to hurt herself horribly. And when she did it, she even had the document notarized with her time on it that she ran faster than a lot of the men. So flash forward, Greta Weitz, showed up in 1978, and she beat almost all the men at the New York City Marathon, and that got people's attention. Then she came back the next year and ran even faster, and even the New York Times had an op-ed piece that said, hey, it's time to put the women's marathon into the Olympic Games, because Greta Weitz clearly shows that women can do anything that men can do.
How do you figure out a way that is best for you to start a running program, to eventually run a marathon?
I think you make it very elemental. People who try to start by buying the most expensive shoes and buying the most expensive clothing and the most expensive watch, they lose some of the fundamental joy of being a runner, which is really just getting out there and finding a rhythm with your body and finding a moment where you kind of commune with nature in the world and everything else just kind of shuts out. And all of a sudden you realize you've run 10 miles instead of maybe 2 miles just because you kind of built up to it and you find that. And then you can start thinking about the fancy stuff.
Martin Dugard is the author of The Long Run. Martin, thanks a lot.
Thanks, eh? Great to be on.
This message comes from Mint Mobile. If you're tired of spending hundreds on big wireless bills, bogus fees, and free perks, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/switch. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
This message comes from Grainger. This is the story of the one. As a procurement manager for a hospital system, she keeps every facility in her network stocked and ready. That's why she counts on Grainger to be her single source for thousands of products, from disinfectants to lighting, air filters, and more. And with fast, dependable delivery, Grainger helps her keep every facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from Strawberry.me. If you could go back and talk to your younger self, would you tell yourself that you have a job that truly makes you happy? Many people are stuck in jobs they've outgrown or never really wanted. A career coach from Strawberry.me can help you move on to something you actually love. Benefit from having a dedicated coach in your corner and get 50% off your first coaching session at strawberry.me/NPR.
And now the book This Is Not About Running, a memoir by runner Mary Cain, who was a child running prodigy, one of the fastest in the world. She broke the 2-minute mark in the 800-meter race, but she says systematic emotional and physical abuse from her coaches at the Nike Oregon Project almost broke her. She talks with All Things Considered host Juana about exposing that abuse and the damage it did.
From the time she was a little girl, Mary Cain has always loved running.
I think I just loved the freedom of it. I mean, I was the kid who I remember in kindergarten, we would do those like laps around the track during gym class and you had to run as fast as you could. And I liked beating the boys. Like I had this competitive spirit. But I also just kind of liked this idea that if I pushed myself, I could get better.
She went on to become the first American high school girl to run 800 meters in under 2 minutes. And at just 17, she joined the Nike Oregon Project, an elite running training program run by coach Alberto Salazar. But Mary Cain never fully realized her pro-running dreams. In her new memoir, This Is Not About Running, she recounts the humiliation and abuse she suffered from coaches and teammates alike, and the health battles brought about by severe restrictions on her diet, experiences that she says drove her to the brink of suicide. The Nike Oregon Project shut down in 2019 after Salazar was sanctioned for doping violations. He was later banned from the sport for life amid allegations of sexual assault. Before all that, though, when Cain was still in high school, she said the program and Salazar had an undeniable draw.
From my perspective, he was the greatest coach in the world because just that summer I was watching Mo Farah and Galen Rupp come in 1-2 at the Olympics in the 10K and watching Matthew Centrowitz finish 4th in the 1500. And Matthew and Galen were really the biggest names in American distance running. And so for this famed coach to want to work with me, I mean, I guess anyone who's ever dreamed big about anything or had any sort of role model, just imagine that person calling you and how it would make you feel. There was almost power behind him. There was a trust and a faith from this massive corporation that just honestly made me feel that much more proud for him to have reached out, but also that much safer that like he knew what he was doing.
Alberto Salazar put a lot of pressure on you in so many ways to perform, to get faster, to lose weight. You're 5'7", and he wanted you to weigh 114 pounds. The lower your weight got, the more health problems you developed. Can you describe what your body was going through at that time?
Yeah, I mean, my body was definitely fighting itself. And I think what I really noticed first in retrospect was just how almost emotional I was becoming. And in retrospect, a lot of that was because I was being actively abused. So of course, you're going to cry when you're being yelled at. But I think once I started starving myself, that ability to kind of hold it together just started to deteriorate, as did the rest of my body. I mean, I was getting all these aches and pains. I started to develop low back pain. I started to lose hair. I was always cold. And I had this absolutely like intense stomach pain that I would get so often, like probably every other day. And it's fascinating that it's taken me years to realize that's what hunger feels like. And I don't think I actually realized that until I started writing this memoir.
There's this moment you recall in the book from 2015 where you're just really struggling and you go to the hotel room that Salazar and the team's sports psychologist are sharing. And you disclose to them that, as you say, I think I'm losing my mind. I want to kill myself most days. I am cutting myself. Talk about the way that they responded to that, to you.
Yeah, I mean, they responded by saying they're tired and wanted to go to bed, is really the long and the short of it. And I think what's so sad for me is how in that moment, I didn't think, wow, their reaction is wrong or their reaction is bad. I thought, I feel so bad, I'm such a burden to them. And I want people who've ever kind of been in that position to know, like that was not okay that that person did that. But you also shouldn't feel shame for having that reaction, because that's really what abuse does to you.
You left Nike's Oregon project in 2016, and your dream had been working with Salazar, becoming pro. What did it feel like to choose to walk away?
It was incredibly difficult, and it was deeply upsetting. And in many ways, it wasn't fully my choice. It wasn't something that I wanted to do at the time. It was more a mix of me understanding that I was really not okay and I needed to get okay. And also at that point, my parents essentially had an intervention and were like, you need to prioritize your health and your wellness and your mental health more so than your running. And I think that was really difficult for me to hear, but in many ways, I think it's the thing that saved me. Or like having people who were like, we don't care about how fast you run, but we care about you.
If there's a parent out there listening to this who wants to support their child, who is ambitious and competitive and wants to participate in their sport at a high level in the way that you did, what piece of advice would you give them? What should that mom or dad or parent be looking out for?
I think my parents did an incredible job.
Yeah.
But to me, they were fighting against a broken system. But you just always need to be there. And you always need to be doing your best to show your child that they mean more to you than any of their accomplishments. That you love them not because of how fast they run, not because of the grades they get, but because they're them. Loving your child and showing them that love is not tied to accomplishments, is in so many ways what saved my life.
Mary, I do want to end by asking you about running and what your relationship with running is like today. What role does it play in your life now?
I went for a run this morning. It's a rainy day here in Palo Alto, and it was really nice to just be like alone with my thoughts, away from my devices, unable to study for a little bit, and just kind of be with my body. And I feel really grateful that I've been able to get to this point. I think with some patience and kindness towards myself, I have kind of found myself at this place where I do run again. And I think that's really, really nice for me.
We've been speaking with Mary Cain. Her memoir, This Is Not About Running, is out now. Mary, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's it for this week on NPR's Book of the Day. Let us know what you think. You can write to us at bookoftheday@npr.org. I'm Alyssa Nadworny. This podcast is produced by Chloe Weiner and edited by Megan Sullivan. Our founding editor is Petra Mayer. The show elements for this week were produced and edited by Hadil El-Solchi, Gabe O'Connor, Shannon Rhodes, Martin Patience, Todd Munt, Emiko Tamagawa, Adriana Gallardo, Lindsay Toddy, Christopher Intagliata, and Jason Fuller. Yolanda Sanguini is our executive producer. Thank you for listening.
This message comes from Mint Mobile. If you're tired of spending hundreds on big wireless bills, bogus fees, and free perks, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/switch. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. This message comes from NPR sponsor Certified Financial Planners. Asking the right questions can greatly impact your future, especially when it comes to your finances. So if you're looking for a financial advisor you can trust, Certified Financial Planner professionals are committed to acting in your best interest. That's why it's gotta be a CFP. Find your CFP professional at letsmakeaplan.org.
This message comes from Lisa. From night one, you'll feel the difference. Premium materials that deliver serious comfort and full-body support. Go to lisa.com for 30% off mattresses, plus get an extra $50 off with promo code NPR.